The day my world shattered began with a single, gut-wrenching scream. My sister, Emily, stood in the living room, her face pale as she clutched an empty metal box that once held my life savings. "It's gone," she shrieked, her voice slicing through the morning calm, accusing me of stealing the $10,000 I'd painstakingly saved for my dream of opening a bakery. I froze, my coffee mug trembling in my hands. The room spun as my parents, their faces twisted with disappointment, turned to me. Emily, my older sister by 2 years, had always been the golden child, charming, persuasive, untouchable. I, Claire, was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who paid the household bills without complaint since Dad's heart attack left him unable to work. But now, their eyes burned into me, convinced by Emily's crocodile tears that I was the thief. "It wasn't me," I stammered, my voice cracking. "I've been saving that money for years. Why would I steal from myself?" But Emily's performance was Oscar-worthy. She sobbed, pointing to the empty box, claiming she'd seen me sneaking around the garage where I kept it. My parents, already swayed by her charisma, didn't hesitate. "Claire, how could you?" Mom whispered, her voice heavy with betrayal. Dad's silence was worse. His eyes, once warm, now cold as stone. By noon, I was out. They didn't even let me pack properly. Emily stood by the door, smirking as I shoved clothes into a duffel bag, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and disbelief. "You'll regret this," I whispered, not to her, but to the life I thought I had. I'd been the backbone of this family, paying the mortgage, utilities, even Emily's car insurance, while she flitted through life without a care. Now, I was cast out, branded a thief. I drove to a cheap motel, my hands shaking on the wheel. The neon sign flickered as I checked in, the clerk's pitying glance burning into me. Alone in the dim room, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. Notifications pinged, bills due, reminders of my role as the family's financial crutch. Then it hit me, if they thought I was the villain, why keep playing the hero? I logged into the bank app and froze every automatic payment. Mortgage, electricity, water, internet canceled. If they wanted to throw me out, they could figure out how to survive without me. The next morning, my phone exploded with texts. "Mom, the power's out. What did you do?" "Dad, Claire, this isn't a game. Fix this now." Emily, predictably, was silent. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop, ordered a latte, and started planning my next move. I wasn't just going to survive this betrayal, I was going to thrive. But first, I needed answers. How had Emily pulled this off? And why? I called my best friend, Mia, who worked at a local bank. "Can you trace a withdrawal or check for weird activity on my account?" I asked, my voice low. Mia, always loyal, didn't hesitate. "Give me a few hours," she said. While I waited, I scrolled through Emily's social media, something I rarely did. Her posts were a parade of luxury new designer bags, dinners at upscale restaurants, a flashy watch I knew she couldn't afford on her part-time barista salary. My stomach churned. The pieces were starting to fit. Mia called back that afternoon. "Claire, your savings account was drained 3 weeks ago. A cash withdrawal. No digital trail. But the teller remembers a woman matching Emily's description." My blood ran cold. Emily had access to the garage, knew where I kept the box, and had a history of borrowing things without asking. But $10,000. This wasn't just greed, this was calculated. I drove back to the house, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and fury. The power was still off, the windows dark. Emily's car was gone, but Mom answered the door, her face haggard. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. I held up my phone, showing Mia's text with the bank's findings. "Emily took the money. Mom, not me. And I'm done paying for her lies." Mom's face crumpled, but she didn't argue. For the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. I didn't stay to see what happened next. I had a life to rebuild, and I wasn't going to let their betrayal define me. But as I drove away, I knew this was only the beginning. Emily wasn't going to confess easily, and my parents' loyalty to her wouldn't break overnight. I needed a plan not just to clear my name, but to make them see the truth. The motel room smelled of stale cigarette smoke and regret, but it was my sanctuary now. I spent the next day scouring job listings, determined to rebuild. My bakery dream was on hold, but I wasn't going to let Emily's betrayal bury it. My phone buzzed relentlessly, more texts from Mom. Pleading, then accusing, then pleading again. Dad sent a single message, "Come home. We'll talk." But I wasn't ready. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend with a text. Mia met me at the coffee shop, her laptop open, a grim look on her face. "I pulled some strings," she said, sliding a printout across the table. It was a grainy security camera still from the bank, showing a woman with Emily's unmistakable blonde curls withdrawing cash. The teller confirmed it was her. Mia said, "She used your ID. Claire. Forged your signature." My hands shook as I stared at the image. Emily hadn't just stolen my money, she'd stolen my identity. I felt sick, but anger burned hotter. How did she even get my ID? I muttered. Mia shrugged. "She's your sister. She knows where you keep everything." That truth stung. Emily had always been sneaky, rifling through my things as kids, borrowing my clothes, my jewelry, even my diary once. But this was a new low. I needed more proof. I drove to the bank, my heart racing as I asked to speak to the manager. He was sympathetic but firm without a police report. They couldn't do much. Filing one meant confronting Emily directly, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. Instead, I asked for a detailed transaction history. The manager printed it out, and there it was, $10. 000 withdrawn in a single transaction. 3 weeks ago, the day Emily had been helping me organize the garage. Back at the motel, I spread the documents on the bed, piecing together a timeline. Emily had been struggling financially for months. Her social media flaunted a lifestyle she couldn't sustain. I remembered her asking me for a loan last month, claiming it was for car repairs. I'd said no, tired of bailing her out. Was this her revenge? Or had she always planned to screw me over? My phone rang, Dad. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Claire, the water's shut off now," he said, his voice strained. "We can't live like this. Come home." I clenched my jaw. "Did you ask Emily where my money went?" Silence. Then, "She says she doesn't know anything." Of course she did. I hung up, my resolve hardening. If they wouldn't believe me, I'd make them see. I started digging deeper into Emily's life. I called her ex-boyfriend, Jake, who'd always been decent to me. "She's been acting weird," he admitted. "Spending like crazy, talking about moving out of state. Said she came into some cash." My heart sank. Moving out of state. With my money. I thanked Jake and hung up, my mind racing. I needed to confront her, but not yet. I needed undeniable proof. I spent the next day tailing Emily. It felt absurd, like I was in a bad detective movie, but desperation drove me. She left the house around noon, driving to a high-end boutique downtown. Through the window, I watched her try on dresses, laughing with the saleswoman, paying with a thick wad of cash. My cash. My blood boiled, but I stayed calm, snapping photos with my phone. Evidence. That night, I emailed the bank manager, attaching the photos and the transaction history. "This is my sister," I wrote. "She used my ID. I want to press charges." The words felt final, a line I couldn't uncross. But Emily had crossed one first. I wasn't just fighting for my money, I was fighting for my life, my dignity, my truth. As I lay in the motel bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, I realized something. This wasn't just about the $10. 000. It was about years of being overshadowed, undervalued, blamed. Emily had always gotten away with everything. But not this time. I wasn't the quiet, reliable Claire anymore. I was done being their doormat. Tomorrow, I'd start building my case in my new life. The police station was colder than I expected, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on the linoleum floor. I sat across from Officer Daniels, a kind-eyed man in his 40s, and handed him the folder of evidence, bank statements, the security camera still, photos of Emily's shopping spree. "This is my sister," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "She stole my identity and my savings." Daniels reviewed the documents, his brow furrowing. "This is serious. MS. Harper. Forging an ID and stealing $10. 000 could mean felony charges." My heart thudded. Felony. The word felt like a sledgehammer. But I nodded. "I want justice," I said. He promised to investigate and advised me to stay away from Emily for now. Easier said than done. I drove back to the motel, my mind a storm of emotions. Part of me wanted to storm into the house, confront Emily, and scream until she admitted everything. But I knew better to twist it, play the victim, and my parents would eat it up. Instead, I focused on survival. I applied for a part-time job at a local bakery, leveraging my years of amateur baking. The owner, a gruff but kind woman named Rosa, hired me on the spot. "You've got passion," she said. "That's enough for now." Work became my refuge. Kneading dough, piping frosting, watching customers smile reminded me why I'd saved that $10. 000 in the first place. But every night, back in the motel, reality crashed in. My phone buzzed with more texts from Mom. The bank called about the mortgage. "We're in trouble, Claire." I didn't respond. Let them feel the weight of their choices. A week later, Officer Daniels called. "We brought Emily in for questioning," he said. "She denies everything, but the evidence is strong. We're working on a warrant to search her apartment." Apartment. I hadn't realized she'd moved out. My parents hadn't mentioned it, probably too ashamed to admit they'd let her go while I was still exiled. I decided to visit the house. Not to beg, but to see how far they'd fallen without me. The lawn was overgrown, the mailbox stuffed with overdue notices. Mom answered the door, her eyes red-rimmed. "Claire," she whispered, stepping aside. The living room was a mess of unwashed dishes, unpaid bills scattered on the coffee table. Dad sat in his recliner, staring at the blank TV screen. No power, no cable. "Where's Emily?" I asked, my voice flat. Mom hesitated. "She moved out. Said she needed space." I laughed. A bitter sound. "Space to spend my money. You mean?" Mom flinched but didn't argue. For the first time, I saw cracks in her blind loyalty to Emily. "We didn't know," she said softly. "We thought. You thought I was the liar." I finished. Dad finally looked up, his face etched with guilt. "We were wrong. Claire, come home." I shook my head. "Not until she admits it. Not until you believe me." I left, my heart heavy but resolute. Back at the motel, I got another call from Daniels. They'd searched Emily's apartment and found a designer handbag with a receipt dated the day after my money disappeared. "It's not enough for an arrest yet," he said, "but we're close." I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. Emily was slipping, her lies unraveling. But I wasn't done. I started posting on social media not to vent, but to reclaim my narrative. I shared vague but pointed updates about betrayal and resilience, tagging Emily subtly. Friends reached out, shocked, offering support. Some even shared stories of Emily's shady behavior, unpaid debts, broken promises. The tide was turning. That night, I dreamed of the bakery I'd planned to open. Warm light, the smell of fresh bread, Customers laughing. It felt so real. So close. When I woke, I made a vow. I'd get my money back, clear my name, and build that dream. Emily could run, but she couldn't hide forever. And I was just getting started. The bakery smelled like Hope cinnamon, vanilla, and second chances. Working with Rosa was grueling but grounding. She taught me tricks I'd never learned from YouTube tutorials. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was moving forward. But every step toward my future was shadowed by the past. Emily was still out there, living off my money, while I scraped by in a motel. Officer Daniels called with an update. We found more evidence. He said, a pawn shop receipt in Emily's apartment for a watch sold the same week your money was taken. The serial number matches one she posted on Instagram. My heart leapt. It wasn't just about the money Anna Maria, it was about exposing her. What's next? I asked. We're building a case for identity theft and grand larceny. He said, but she's dodging us. Any idea where she might be? I didn't, but I knew someone who might. I called Jake again. She's been crashing with a friend in Oakwood. He said reluctantly. Some guy she met at a bar. I don't know more. Oakwood was a ritzy neighborhood, far beyond Emily's means, or so I thought. Armed with this lead, I passed it to Daniels. Then I did something risky. I drove to Oakwood. The address Jake gave me was a sleek condo building, all glass and steel. I parked across the street, watching. Sure enough, Emily emerged, laughing with a man in a tailored suit. She wore a new leather jacket, her hair freshly dyed. My money, I thought, my fists clenching. I snapped photos, my hands shaking with rage. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a performance. A middle finger to everything I'd sacrificed for our family. I sent the photos to Daniels, then drove to the bakery. Rosa noticed my mood. You look like you're carrying the world, she said, sliding a fresh scone my way. I spilled everything: Emily's theft, my parents' betrayal, the police investigation. Rosa listened, her eyes softening. Family can break you, she said, but it can't define you. You're stronger than this, Claire. Her words stuck with me. That night, I wrote a letter to my parents, not to send, but to clarify my own thoughts. I poured out years of resentment, how I'd been the responsible one, the one who paid the bills, while Emily skated by on charm. How their blind faith in her had cost me everything. Writing it felt like lancing a wound, painful, but cleansing. The next day, Mom showed up at the bakery. I was frosting cupcakes when she walked in, looking older than her 55 years. Claire, she said, her voice breaking. We got a call from the police. They're looking for Emily. I set down the piping bag, my heart racing. And? I asked. She hesitated. They found things. Receipts. Clothes. A bank card in your name. We didn't know. I wanted to scream, to ask why they hadn't believed me sooner. Instead, I said, you chose her over me. You kicked me out. Tears welled in her eyes. We were wrong. Please, come home. I shook my head. Not yet. Not until she's held accountable. Mom left, and I threw myself into work. But that evening, Daniels called with a bombshell. Emily's been arrested. He said, she confessed to using your ID, but claimed she borrowed the money and planned to pay it back. I laughed bitterly. Borrowed. She'd spent it on luxury, not survival. What happens now? I asked. She's facing charges. He said, court date's in a month. You'll need to testify. Testify. The word felt heavy. Final. I'd have to face Emily, my parents, a courtroom full of strangers, and relive every moment of this betrayal. But I was ready. For the first time, I felt like I was taking back control, not just of my money, but of my life. I thanked Daniels and hung up, staring out the motel window. The neon sign flickered, but for once, it didn't feel like a taunt. It felt like a challenge, one I was ready to meet. Emily's arrest hit the family like a tidal wave. Mom called daily, her voice a mix of guilt and desperation, begging me to come home. Dad sent long texts, apologizing, promising to make things right. But I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. The wound was too fresh. The betrayal too deep. I stayed at the motel, working long hours at the bakery, saving every penny. Rosa became my anchor, teaching me not just baking but resilience. You don't need their approval, she said one day, kneading dough beside me. You're building something real. The court date loomed, a dark cloud on the horizon. I met with a lawyer, Ms. Carter, a sharp woman with a no-nonsense attitude. She reviewed my evidence bank records, photos, the pawn shop receipt, and nodded approvingly. This is a strong case, she said. Emily's confession helps, but her borrowing excuse won't hold up. You'll get your money back, Claire, and maybe more for damages. Damages. The word felt right, encompassing not just the $10,000, but the trust she'd shattered. I spent nights preparing my testimony, replaying every moment of that awful day. The empty metal box, Emily's crocodile tears, my parents' accusing Isit, all burned in my memory. But I wasn't just fighting for justice. I was fighting to reclaim my voice. Emily had silenced me for too long, her charm eclipsing my truth. Not anymore. A week before the hearing, I visited the house, not to reconcile, but to collect my remaining belongings. The place was a shadow of itself, no power, no water, the air thick with tension. Mom hugged me, tears streaming, but Dad just nodded, his pride too wounded to speak. Where's Emily? I asked. She's out on bail, Mom said, staying with a friend. I didn't ask more. I grabbed my books, my baking tools, and left. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the motel desk, writing in my journal. It wasn't just about Emily Anna Marie, it was about me. Who I was, who I wanted to be. I'd always been the responsible one, the fixer, but this ordeal had forced me to see my own strength. I wasn't just Claire, the scapegoat. I was Claire, the survivor. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, the air heavy with anticipation. Emily sat across the room, her face pale, her usual confidence gone. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My parents were there too, sitting stiffly, their expressions unreadable. When I took the stand, my voice shook at first, but Ms. Carter's steady gaze anchored me. I told the truth, how I'd saved the money, how Emily had access to the garage, how she'd forged my ID. I showed the photos, the receipts, the bank records. Emily's lawyer tried to spin it, claiming she'd been desperate, that she'd meant to repay me. But the judge wasn't swayed. Ms. Harper, he said to Emily, your actions caused significant harm. This wasn't borrowing, it was theft. The gavel fell, and Emily was ordered to pay restitution and serve 6 months in jail, with 2 years probation. I felt no joy, only relief. As we left the courtroom, Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I need time, I said. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Emily glanced at me, her face a mask of shame and defiance. But she said nothing. I walked out into the sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in months. Back at the bakery, Rosa hugged me. You did it, she said. I smiled, a real smile, for the first time in forever. The $10,000 would come back, slowly, through Emily's restitution. But more than that, I'd reclaimed my truth. I wasn't done with my family. Love doesn't vanish overnight, but I was done being their doormat. The future was mine, and I was ready to build it. The weeks after the trial were a strange limbo. The court ordered Emily to pay restitution, but the money would trickle in over months, maybe years. I didn't care as much about the dollars anymore. Justice had been served, and that was enough for now. I moved out of the motel into a tiny studio apartment, its walls bare but full of possibility. The bakery job was steady, and Rosa hinted at a promotion if I kept up my work. For the first time, I felt like I was building something for myself, not just holding up a family that didn't appreciate me. My parents kept reaching out, their messages a mix of apologies and pleas. "We miss you," Mom wrote. "We're struggling without you." Dad's texts were shorter, heavier. "I failed you, Claire. I'm sorry." I read them but didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't a switch I could flip. They'd chosen Emily's lies over my truth, and that scar wouldn't fade easily. I started therapy, something I'd never considered before. Dr. Ellis, a soft-spoken woman with a knack for cutting through my defenses, helped me unpack years of resentment. "You've been carrying your family's weight for too long," she said. "It's okay to let go." Letting go didn't mean cutting them off. She explained that it meant prioritizing myself. I clung to that idea, repeating it like a mantra. One day, Rosa called me into her office. "You've got talent," she said, handing me a business card for a local baking competition. "Enter it. Show the world what you can do." My heart raced. The prize was $5. 000, half my stolen savings and exposure that could jumpstart my bakery dream. I spent nights perfecting my entry, a lavender honey cake with edible flowers. Delicate and bold, like the new me I was becoming. The competition was a whirlwind. I stood in a bustling convention center, surrounded by bakers with far more experience. My hands shook as I presented my cake, but the judges' smiles gave me hope. When they called my name for second place $2,000 and a feature in a local food magazine, I cried. Not for the money, but for the validation. I was more than the sister who paid the bills, more than the scapegoat. I was Claire, the baker, the fighter. That night, I got a call from Mom. "We saw your name in the paper," she said, her voice trembling with pride. "We're so proud, Claire." I wanted to believe her, but the words felt hollow. "Thanks," I said, keeping it short. "I'm busy." I hung up, my heart aching but firm. They didn't get to claim my victories after ignoring my pain. A month later, I visited Emily in jail. I hadn't planned to, but Dr. Ellis suggested it might bring closure. Emily looked smaller behind the glass, her bravado gone. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I was desperate. I didn't think it would hurt you this much." I stared at her, searching for sincerity. "You didn't think," I said. "You just took." She nodded, tears falling. "I'll pay you back, Claire. I swear." I didn't know if I believed her, but I felt lighter leaving the jail. Not because I forgave her, but because I'd faced her. She wasn't the larger-than-life sister anymore, just a flawed, broken person who'd made terrible choices. I wasn't her victim. I was her equal. Back at my apartment, I framed the magazine article about my baking win. It hung on the wall, a reminder of what I could do when I believed in myself. My parents kept calling, and I started answering, keeping conversations short but civil. Healing would take time, but I was open to trying. For now, I had my baking, my dreams, and a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Emily's betrayal had broken me, but it had also rebuilt me, stronger than before. 6 months after the trial, life felt like a new chapter. My studio apartment was small but mine, filled with secondhand furniture and the warm smell of test recipes. The bakery had become my second home, and Rosa promoted me to assistant manager, trusting me with inventory and staff training. The $2,000 from the baking competition sat in a new savings account, a seed for my future bakery. Emily's restitution payments started arriving small, inconsistent, but real. I didn't need her money to feel whole anymore, but it was a start. My parents and I were on fragile terms. I agreed to meet them for coffee, a neutral ground. They looked older, worn by the months without my financial support. The house was back on track. They'd taken out a loan to cover the overdue bills, but the strain showed in their eyes. "We're so sorry, Claire," Dad said, his voice breaking. We should have listened. Mom reached for my hand. And this time, I let her. We want you back in our lives, she said. I nodded, my throat tight. It'll take time, I said. But I'm here. Emily was released from jail a week later. She texted me, asking to meet. I chose the bakery, my turf. She walked in, her usual swagger replaced by a quiet nervousness. I'm trying to make things right, she said, sliding an envelope across the counter. It was a cashier's check, $4,500, part of the restitution. I got a job, she added. A real one. I'm done with the lies. I wanted to believe her, but trust was a long road. Keep going, I said. Prove it. That night, I baked a new recipe, a lemon rosemary tart, bright and sharp, like the clarity I'd fought for. As I pulled it from the oven, Rosa clapped me on the shoulder. You're going to have your own place one day, she said. I smiled, believing it. The dream I'd saved for wasn't go night was just delayed. And now, it felt closer than ever. I started hosting baking workshops at the community center, sharing my skills with kids and aspiring bakers. It was my way of giving back, of building a legacy beyond my family's drama. Friends from the competition reached out, offering to collaborate, and I began planning a pop-up bakery event. The $10,000 theft had nearly destroyed me, but it had also pushed me to fight for myself in ways I never had before. One evening, Mom and Dad came to a workshop. They sat in the back, watching me teach a group of teens how to pipe buttercream. Afterward, Mom hugged me, tears in her eyes. You're incredible, she said. Dad nodded, his voice gruff. We're proud, Claire. We always should have been. For the first time, I felt their words sink in. Not as a fix, but as a step. Emily started showing up too, quietly, bringing small payments and smaller apologies. I didn't forgive her fully. Some wounds don't heal completely, but I let her in, bit by bit. Dr. Ellis had been right. Letting go didn't mean erasing the past. It meant choosing my future. And my future was flour-dusted, sugar-sweet, and mine. As I locked up the bakery one night, the stars bright overhead, I felt a quiet peace. The betrayal had shattered my old life, but it had built a new one where I was the hero of my own story. I wasn't just the sister who paid the bills or the scapegoat for Emily's lies. I was Claire Harper, baker, survivor, dreamer, and no one could take that from me.